Yes, thank you all for being here. And I really thought it was important that we had this kind of workshop because everybody immediately got on Zoom and had some kind of virtual worship services when COVID-19 hit. But there's more to church than worship. I mean, not that worship isn't important, worship's really important. People think of church as community also. And that goes beyond worship. It's not just what takes place on Sunday morning, it's how people form community and keep connected. And sometimes that's been left behind. And so as I look at newsletters and online, I saw how some churches are continuing to be connected beyond Sunday mornings. And so I've asked a couple of our churches to talk about how they're continuing to keep their members connected beyond Sunday mornings. And so Liz Smith in a rather large church and David Wheeler in a couple churches that are not so large, how they're continuing to be connected beyond Sunday morning. So David and Liz, thank you so much for doing this for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're really excited to be here. David, I'll go ahead and get the PowerPoint pulled up, and then do you want to spend a couple minutes introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter to me if you want to go first or second, it doesn't matter.
You go ahead.
I'm David Wheeler, like Edith said. I think I've probably seen most of you around doing the work of the church and the work of the conference. So I pastor the two churches you can see on the PowerPoint there, Federated Church in Weatherford and the First Congregational Church of Norman. Before COVID hit, Norman might have on a normal Sunday morning worship, they worship Sunday afternoon, but might have, give or take 40. And on a normal week, and Weatherford was getting close to about 70 at Federated Church. So that gives you an idea of the size of our churches. I've been a pastor, I think this is my 20th year since I was ordained, coming up real quick here. But I actually was a local pastor for several years before that. So I guess about 26 years now that I've been in ministry, even while I was a student. And hopefully we can just find some ways to share what we're doing. We don't pretend to have all the answers. I know that. We're Liz and I were talking about it. We're just doing the best we can, making this stuff up as we go along. And lots of you, hopefully, at some point, will also share with us ideas that we will benefit from. So consider us, and I'll speak for myself, just more of a facilitator of this conversation by sharing a few examples, and certainly no authority on it. That said, I hope what we have to say is helpful. And at any time that you can go to the chat and drop a question or raise your hand or jump in, and we'll do our best to keep that discussion moving along.
Yeah, thanks, David. My name's Liz Smith, and I'm the Welcome and Care Coordinator at Plymouth Church. I've been attending Plymouth since 2014, and I started working there at the beginning of 2018. And so Plymouth is a slightly bigger church. In-person worship, we'd have about 300 each Sunday. And I'm really excited to share different ideas that we've been coming up with. I have described our process as sort of just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, because some programs that we tried to start up went really well, others nobody seemed interested in, and that was fine. We just tried to duck and roll. So all right, I think we're gonna start out. David's gonna talk about the main challenges to connecting during this time, and then I'll talk about the different types of connection that we're trying to foster. And then we'll just get into the meat of the things we've been doing and give you a couple examples and try to talk about nuts and bolts. And hopefully maybe one or two of these programs will strike you as something interesting, something you might want to try with your own congregation. So, all right, David, if you want to talk about challenges.
Yeah. So I think we've all encountered it. We don't probably have to sell you on the problem, but I think it does us well to talk about it. If your churches are either in online only type of activities, or maybe you're starting to venture out and try a few in-person things, maybe outdoors or socially distanced, or maybe some of you may already be back. in worship or have some kind of a hybrid mode. I think no matter where you are on that sliding scale, you're going to find that it's difficult to keep people motivated. It is not, there's nothing normal, as we all can agree. Can we just get an amen? There's nothing normal about this season of life that we are enduring. And many people are up and down and all around, including yours truly, on any given day during this pandemic. And so, keeping people motivated, I think, rather than just kind of a one size fits all, you may have to temper these things we say and adjust them a little bit, or you may have to find something unique, but hopefully we give you enough options. And that's kind of what I've tried to do, is just find a couple different options. We're not a large enough church at either place to have lots of resources, but if we can just find some things that are compelling to the people that we have, at least the vast majority of them, you can't help everybody be motivated, but if you can keep everybody on the same page, trying to get together, at least in some, safe ways, it's good. And then, the challenge is also, I don't know about your church, but at both my congregations, we've actually had new people find us because of our online worshiping presence, people that are brand new to our congregations. And so that has happened, largely because we broadcast our services publicly through the church Facebook pages. Honestly, that's where 99% of it happens. And so it's public, and we ask our members at the beginning of every week to share our service on their timeline, or to start a watch party. And so I think, those kind of things, they can get you new people, but when you do have people that find your congregation, this is a difficult time to know how to integrate them. So I've done a little bit of membership classes online. We haven't had tons of new members join, but we've had several new members join at both congregations since March. And so we try to be creative with membership classes even through this time, and then introducing them in ways to the congregation where the congregation knows them and is excited about them as well during this weird time. Then finding out what people want and need. That's sometimes a challenge. If you've noticed, some people don't really do email very well. Other people, they want to text you, but having conversations where you get right down to the nitty gritty, so to speak, of what it is that people are really wanting and needing. Oftentimes what they think they want may not be what they need, or vice versa, and helping assess those situations can be a real big challenge for us as leaders. And then, of course, can I see a hand? Anybody had Zoom fatigue on any given day since this started? So much online, so many meetings, Zoom, right? And it's real. It is a real challenge to deal with this. And so the last thing sometimes people want to do is to have another Zoom meeting. So you got to make it nourishing enough to where people, I think, are willing to continue to deal with the hardware, if it's virtual, or to find some safe ways to do it in person. But these are all some of the challenges. So I'll let Liz jump in and kind of talk about the different types of connections, the big picture kinds of connections that we both kind of agreed we're trying to build.
Yeah, thanks, David. So there's a few different types of connections that I've kind of focused on trying to cultivate with Plymouth. And hopefully any given program is going to cultivate two or even all three of these connections. But, even if you just get one, you're still building connections between your members and maybe between your lay leadership, whoever it is you're trying to forge stronger bonds between. So the first is just social connection, fellowship, right? I work with the fellowship board at Plymouth, and we have tried to think of ways to stay connected and have fun with one another, and just catch up and chat. And so some of the programs I'll be talking about today are just about how do we maintain those social connections. Right before COVID hit, I put a ton of work into creating dinner groups, and all the dinner groups met one time, and then COVID. And I was so sad because it really didn't translate well, and to doing it via Zoom. And so we've had to think of creative new ways to create social connections with one another. Spiritual connections, of course. We're churches, right? We're not just a dinner club. We're not just a Rotary club. We're not, we have a greater purpose, and we want people to build that spiritual connection with one another, to talk about theological matters, to pray together, to support one another in a really difficult time, and help one another think through these tough issues. So spiritual connection is also a really important dimension that you're trying to build between members. And that's hard enough in person, much less over the internet. So hopefully we'll give you some ideas today to work on that. And if you have ideas for us, by all means, let us know. And then the last one would be caring connections. So do people feel loved and supported by their church community in this ridiculously difficult time? And there's a lot of different angles you can come at here. Do they feel prayed for? Do they, maybe you're providing meals. Maybe if someone's having a really tough time, maybe Stephen ministry is a good way to build caring connections. There's lots of different ways to come at it. And we're really trying to build out the care ministries at Plymouth Church. My position recently changed to Welcome and Care Coordinator. Before it was Membership Associate. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about how can we ask members to care for one another. And so before we move on to the next slide, I just want to talk about a few strategies that relate back to the challenges David was talking about. So I'd say that one strategy is to build these connections is trying a lot of different things. Like I said, throwing spaghetti at the wall, because each one of your members is different, and each one is going to have that one thing that really gets them excited and gets them wanting to be involved and connect. I have, one person at the church who she's a wonderful individual. She's so caring. She's a great leader. She's so smart. And, I reached out to her about this one program. Nope, not interested. Sorry. I'm busy. I reached out to her about another program. Nope, I don't have the time for that right now. And then I put out something just in general to ask people if they wanted to sign up for mental health training, mental health first aid training. And we're going to try to start a mental health group at Plymouth. And she emailed me and said, I'm taking the training and I want you to keep me posted and I want to be involved in this. And so that's her thing. That's what she's excited about. And I've had that happen more than once where, people have Zoom fatigue. People are being very choosy about what they want to go online for. But if you find that thing that's going to pull them in and get them connected, it's gold. That's wonderful. So trying a lot of different things. Another really important dimension to this is diffuse leadership. So if I tried to run every single group that I'm going to talk about on here, they would not go. They would not function. If David tried to start 6 or 7 ministries, that's, it's not going to happen. Sorry, my computer is just doing all sorts of things. Building out leaders and helping them, building disciples, helping them to learn that they can lead a group, they can have ownership of a ministry at the church. And then you check in on them and you make sure they're doing okay, and you pour into those leaders. But then you're at the level of helping them understand, hey, this is why this is so important, and what support can I give you? And then they run the ministry and they build those connections themselves. So that is going to be crucial to building connections beyond worship, because I know a lot of pastors don't have a large support staff. We're blessed at Plymouth to have a few different people who can run this programming, but even we can't do all of the things that we want to do without the help of our lay leaders. So doing a lot of things, lay leaders, and being willing to just evaluate programs and let them go, I think, is, if it's not working, don't keep it going. I really, there's been a couple of things that I really was excited about. We were going to try to do a grocery delivery service at the beginning of COVID, and we had 40 people sign up to deliver groceries. Unfortunately, no one wanted us to. No one was interested. And I kept having people email me and say, I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to bring these groceries. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have literally no one for you to take groceries to. So you've got to evaluate your ministries and say, hey, this just isn't working. Let's move on to the next thing. So, all right. What are we talking about first? Oh, I just have just a few different ideas for things that we've been doing. And then we'll get into larger, more specific programs. So David, if you want to talk about those first few things, and then I'll talk about the other ones. But this is just to get the brains moving.
Sure. We do, if your congregation is not divided up into some kind of nurture or care groups that are checking on each other, before all this pandemic set in, I would really highly encourage you to think about ways that you could just divide your congregation and into whatever, it's going to, however many groups you have is going to depend on the size. But my congregation at Weatherford had this, we were fortunate in that a previous minister several years before I came along had actually put in place family groups as a structure for the congregation to do lots of ministry and as well as check on each other. But they had kind of grown lax in checking on each other a bit until the pandemic hit. And then we realized we really needed to brush that back up. So we had, a Zoom meeting with each of the leaders of our family groups, and we have 3 at the Federated Church in Weatherford. There's probably 25 to 30 people in each one of those groups, and they kind of have, you could do it different ways, but we wanted actually to get outside of the whole Zoom thing and go back to making actual phone calls as a first resort, email as a last resort if you can't get people, or texting as a last resort if you can't actually talk to people. But we try to encourage our family groups. They're basically responsible. They have other responsibilities, but in terms of this conversation today, they basically check on each other. How are you doing? And those family group leaders for each one of those groups might have 2 or 3 assistants underneath them, so that one person is not responsible for as much, but then they check back in. You could divide that up however you wanted to do that, but these family groups are great. And then, you can do a whole congregational check-in thing where it's a free will invitation, to Zoom, if that's one way to do it, or if you're in person, maybe you do it outside. We've done both of those at my congregations. What I find there, though, is the folks that you might really need to check on don't necessarily show up or make the effort. And sometimes people fall through the cracks if we're not, actively having people engaged, going out and finding out, where have they been? Are they okay? Is there some way that we could serve them? So it's that's been a helpful process for us. The more, that's kind of outside the norm of a lot of the technology that we've all been really using a lot of since the pandemic began. So, think about outdoor, socially distanced congregational check-ins you could do. Zoom congregational check-ins are good, but just always remember, not everybody shows up for those. And sometimes the people that are really, really depressed or really hurting or really lonely, they almost get into a cycle where they're not going to put necessarily that kind of energy out so those who are stronger, that's why we have each other, right? Those who might be up on any one day can take their energy and reach out to check in on those that may not be engaging in online worship or other technology-based activities, as well as people that are, just to find out how they are. And then the picture request that you see listed there is another thing. Some of you are probably already doing this. We put in our email newsletter that goes out to the congregation. We did a, I guess you call it an Easter parade of sorts, where we asked people to send in their either current pictures for the Easter parade. They could just snap with their cell phone or smartphone or whatever, or maybe even past years where they had Easter get-togethers and you could do that safely. And so send in your happy Easter pictures, and at the end of the service, that way you get everybody there. At the end of the service, we'll show that as kind of our parade, our Easter parade. And so, you can, the how-tos of that real quickly, not to get in too much, but you could, I use Dropbox, other people use the Google Drive thing, but you can send out a file request real simply, and it saves a lot of handling of emails one by one, saving the files, and all those pictures can just go in one spot. And I'd be happy to talk to you about that. If somebody has a question about the how-tos on how to do a file request, I'm not the pro on that, but I can sure try to point you the right direction. And then you can pre-work on those things and set it to music. You can use either a video or photo editing program or something, and we put a song. We had some of our musicians perform a song, and then we put the song to the picture. So that kind of made it workable. Those are just some of the things that I wanted to mention.
Awesome. Thanks, David. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull up the survey that we sent out. So we've tried to do as many in-person check-ins as possible, but you're not going to catch everybody who's watching worship, right? Like if you're at a bigger church especially, you're not going to catch everybody. And so we tried to, I went through the database and looked for people that I was like, I haven't seen them in a while. I haven't seen them. They haven't come to an after church fellowship thing. They haven't come to any classes. I wonder how they're doing. And so we put together a survey, and I don't know if anybody uses Breeze, but Breeze is great you can create surveys on there and link them directly to profiles. I love it. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you the survey. Let's see if I can find it here. And while I'm looking for it, I will talk about a couple of the other things that I had on there. So I had blessing of the animals, and we have all sorts of children's ministry stuff. I'm not super involved with that, so I don't have a lot of stuff on that. But here, I think this is it. But recently we had people bring in their animals to our parking lot, and they did a blessing over them, and that was a great outdoor activity. That was a lot of fun. And I think the other thing, midweek Bible study. That's been really neat. That's been via Zoom, but it's once a week, and our senior pastor leads it, and there's no homework ahead of time, and they go through different things together. Mark, don't want to. All right, so here is the survey that I put together. So I asked them for their name, and then I asked them things like, have you built meaningful one-to-one relationships during this time? And what kind have you fostered? So I talked to friends and family on the phone. I'm calling a Plymouth senior. I'm a Stephen minister, etc. So we've got one-to-one relationships, then we've got small group relationships. So yes, I belong to one or more small groups. No, I haven't had time. And then this is, what kind of small groups do you belong to? Church groups, book clubs, prayer team, etc. And then large group relationships. So have you been able to experience these transcendent larger group? And this was more related to worship. Like, have you felt a part of something larger than yourself? So I tune into worship. I belong to a large group of volunteers. I work for an organization that's making a difference for good. Just trying to get a gauge on people. If there's somebody that responds to that survey that's saying, nope, I'm not connected to anyone and I just feel terrible all the time, we're probably going to give them a call and see how they're doing. And then down here at the bottom, I asked, which of these programs do you want to know more about? So small groups, worship, Stephen ministry, pastoral support, service and justice, or Bible study. And then we can follow up with them based on what they ask for there. We did that also with a worship survey. So where is that? I think that's under worship. And what we did there was we asked them, have you been engaging? How often do you participate in worship? And then what do you miss? This is the question I really want to focus on. What do you miss about in-person worship? Praying together, singing together, catching up with friends. So if they miss praying together, maybe we can send them an invitation to prayer team. If they miss catching up with friends, we can send them an invitation to join a covenant group or come to Sunday fellowship circles, both of which I'll talk more about. So engagement surveys can be a really good way to find out how individuals are doing, especially if you're not seeing them. And you just send them an email, maybe a follow-up, and we have pretty good response rate. We have about 50% response rate. So, all right, I'm going to hop back into the PowerPoint. All right. Sunday fellowship circles. Okay, so I mentioned those a couple of times, but basically what this is on Sunday mornings, right after worship, and people can watch worship at any time, obviously, we're posting it on YouTube, but we do try to have people watch live when possible, and that's from 9:30 to 10:30. At 10:30, people sign on to Zoom, and we've had about 45 people each week signing into Zoom, and then they kind of all chat in a big group for a minute while I sort them into breakout rooms. I tried assigning them ahead of time once or twice, and it just did not work. So I'm doing the assignments each week, and I already have them put into groups on an Excel sheet. And I also have a list of people that have indicated, I sent out a survey, indicated that they wanted to move around between groups, right? They didn't want to stay with the same group. But I have a couple of groups that are same people every week. And then other groups are a little more in flux. And then what we do is each week we send out an invitation, a Zoom invitation to the people who have come. Because we probably have 90 people that have tried it or cycle in and out, and then about a core of 30 that come every week. And then, that other 15 kind of fluctuates. But we'll send them out 3 questions related to the sermon from that week. So I have to sometimes chase down those questions from our pastors, but most of the time they get them to me on Wednesdays. And then the questions are things like, how do you know when God is calling you beyond what's familiar to you? How does it feel? Have you ever talked with someone about your faith, with someone outside the church? So they don't tend to be super deep theological questions, but they hopefully get their brains moving and just let them dig a little deeper into the sermon's message. What's giving you hope these days, etc. And so, we encourage people to grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and then by about 10:40, I split them into groups, and we stay on until 11:30, and then I bring everybody back to the big group, and I say goodbye, and then everybody goes their separate ways. But it's a lot of fun, and some groups I know don't talk about the questions, and that's fine, especially if it's a group that meets every week, and they're all really good friends, and they just want to catch up with each other. That's fine. But other groups love the questions, and I think it really helps newer people, like David was talking about. It's a challenge to get newer people involved. But if you give them a little bit of a structure, 3 questions over 45 minutes, that is a good way to have newer people speak up a little bit about their own experiences. And we've had a couple people who have never set foot in Plymouth participate in these, that just started watching online and saw these and thought they would be neat, and now they have some friends at Plymouth even though they've never met them in person. So it's kind of neat. I really have enjoyed doing that. And I usually pop into one group or another and participate because it's nice to see people. So, all right. David, do you want to go ahead and talk about pub theology? All right. So this group, this really fosters social connections and spiritual connections, and I'd say David's takes that even one step further. It goes in a little deeper into that. So here we go. Oh, and he's going to talk about Leonard Sweet first.
Yeah, so it's an older book. It's actually been around, 15 years or so. If you don't mind, back up there.
Yeah, sorry.
Leonard Sweet's book, I don't think the title's on the slide, but it's Postmodern Pilgrims. And, he's kind of a guy I really kind of appreciate a lot of things about him. Sometimes maybe some of his theology doesn't align with mine. That's okay. But I think he's a really good person who's always looking ahead. And 15 years ago, he was trying to tell churches and leaders that worship or experiences and community together should be experiential, participatory, image-driven, and connective. And it's dated. In his book, he talks a lot about how the game show. Do you remember the old game show? I think they still show lots of reruns of it. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I'm dating myself now a little bit, but it wasn't just a game show. Like, it was an experience, right? The lights would come down if they asked a question, and they would zoom in on somebody, and then it was participatory because they could phone a friend, they could ask the audience. So they were participating, multiple people, not just the one person at a time. And then image driven. And I think here the mistake we make is that we think that because we have a PowerPoint slide, this whole thing's image driven. No, it's how we use our words, our conversations, as well as whatever technology we have at our disposal to paint a picture that piques the curiosity of those that we're interacting with. So, and the questions that we'll try in just a moment, hopefully you'll see a little bit of a couple of things that will help you begin to kind of imagine a picture, if you will, an image that kind of drives part of the conversation. And then the whole connective thing, there's got to be some common thread that runs through each one of us that we can latch onto, hopefully, and that we'll feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, and it's important. So that's all I really want to say about that. But if you want to look it up, Postmodern Pilgrims, it's an older book, but it's a good one, I think, we're talking about designing compelling experiences, whether they be worship or classes. So, right, no better way to learn than to actually experience something. And we have started on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. By the way, you're all welcome to join us. In fact, if your congregation wants to join us, I can send you the link. We do already have a couple of folks from Kansas that join us. We've had people from Tulsa and all over Oklahoma join us. But we do a pub theology group, and usually we'll have about 20 different screens. A lot of them are couples, though, that they're sitting by each other, so more people. But I thought we would just try a little bit of this. Is that okay? Can we try a little pub theology on it? Now, you may not, you see my cup. I'm not going to tell you what's in my cup. No, not really. But people are free to bring a snack or a beverage or an adult beverage, whatever they want. We don't make the drinking part a big thing, but just know that people do that. It especially seems to help relieve some of the stigmas of if somebody was raised in a real strict kind of a fundamentalist upbringing where that was a big taboo. They go, what, you can do that at church? But we also try to be sensitive that there are people who may struggle with addiction. So we don't really make it a big deal. We just say, come with snacks or beverages. We don't ask what's in your cup, and go from there, just to make it relaxed, to kind of, even though we're at computers, you can still kind of relax when you got a snack in your hand or a beverage close by, or a glass of water, or whatever you want. So that's the environment. Now let's just try 2 or 3 quick questions. Normally we'll have 6 guiding questions, okay, for the whole time. And that way it's an hour, and I can look at my watch and know that every 10 minutes we should be moving on to the next question. So we can't do anything like that. We can only take a couple of minutes per question and have 2 or 3 questions, depending on how much we participate. But let me just ask you, usually I start out with something lighthearted. So let me give you a little sample of what I started with last week. Are you ready? What is your very favorite part about October? Unmute yourself if you want to share. Don't worry if you've got a lot of people in here. If you start to talk at the same time, who wants to go first?
Soup.
Houses.
Say it again, Ron.
Soup.
A granddaughter's birthday.
October gets out the soup cookbook.
All right.
Haunted
Who else?
houses.
What'd you say, Kayla?
Haunted houses.
Haunted houses.
My
Good.
favorite part is dressing my
Did
dog
I
Buddy
make
in
my-
different costumes.
Did you recognize it?
What was your,
Watching
what
the
was your
leaves
Shanna? Well, let's go, Shanna. I'll call on Shanna and say yours again.
My favorite part is dressing my dog, my pit bull Bodie, up into different costumes and parading her up and down Mass Street in Lawrence.
And this is an October ritual, I take it.
It is a very deep and meaningful October ritual, yes.
Oh, that's excellent. I see Eleanor McCormick's giving you a heart down there on her square. Who else? William, did you want to share one?
Our granddaughter's birthday.
That's a wonderful thing.
A
Yes,
cooler weather.
Cooler weather. Amen. Amen.
Apple cider.
What was that last one, Lonnie?
Apple cider, I think she said.
Apple cider. Great. Thank you.
Watching the leaves change colors.
Watching, yes, me too. All right. Well, sounds like my dogs are going to help me in the background. I wish I had an outfit to put them in to keep them quiet, Shan. Let me ask you this then. So normally I would shift gears after a real lighthearted one. We're moving a little faster than I would. So no one said annual meeting, Edith Guppy said in the comments. Is that true? I mean, come on, you're supposed to say, oh, I know, it's annual meeting. That's my favorite thing in every October. It's mine, Edith.
It's not mine.
You can use the chat too if you're not getting yours heard, or you said when I didn't hear it, hit the chat. And Rachel Pryor says, I'm loving this chance to see you all this week. We love the chance to see you, Rachel, and thank you. We all thank you for that. So let's get a little deeper now. Is trick-or-treating a safe thing to do during a pandemic? Use the comments over there. Say yes or no if you don't mind, since there's a lot of us. And if I'll just pick out a couple of you since we're short on time to kind of do it. If you can hit the is trick-or-treating a safe thing to do during a pandemic? Some people are saying no. Does anybody say yes, or yes with an asterisk, or depends? Okay, Nancy Phipps, you gave me the kind of answer I'm looking for. Pub theology is all about philosophizing and, you know, having these nuanced conversations. Would you mind, Nancy Phipps, sharing us what the depends part might be for you? And keep in mind, other folks, we're going to have different ideas, and that's okay. Nancy, do you want to share? If you don't, that's okay.
It depends on how it's done.
Okay.
You can, there are some neighborhoods that block off their streets, and they do it as a neighborhood thing, and the kids go from house to house, social distancing, and the treats are put out on the curb. They don't go into the houses, and they're not in groups. They're in groups, but it's done safely. You can do trunk treating at a church as a group, as a church. We've done that at our church before, and they safely distance the kids apart from trunk to trunk in cars. You've got a look on your face like you've never done trunk treating before.
I always have that look on my face. I have a stern look. I don't mean it.
There are safe ways that it can be done, and it has to be planned out. It does not have to be done where you've got hundreds of kids in one place going house to house.
Okay. All right. Who has, thank you, Nancy. We really appreciate that. Now, if you have an opposing view, keep in mind that the job here is not to straighten Nancy out, but just share yours and speak for yourself. Who would have, let's see, some of the folks that have said no. Why do you think it's not safe during a pandemic to do trick or treat? Who has an answer you're willing to share? Just raise your virtual hand, or you know, using your little buttons down there, or just unmute yourself and go. Why would you hesitate to do trick or treating during a pandemic? Anybody
None of
want to
us
do it?
know for sure whether we're safe or not. I live in a very small neighborhood that the neighbors are very close in terms of friendships. And lo and behold, one of our members got COVID, who was isolating herself, except her granddaughter came to visit. And her granddaughter infected her, and her granddaughter infected her mother. We never know. We're keeping safe distances in this neighborhood. If we get within 6 feet, we put our masks on. So we're not going to do it.
Okay. Thank you, Don. That's exactly the kind of, you know, you all were very, very specific, and very respectful. So thank you both. Last one, and we don't have time for lots of answers, but this, you know, I usually try to move more towards, I move from the silly, you know, kind of the crowd, you know, mixer kinds of questions, to the tangible things that we're dealing with, and then maybe to the more spiritual things toward the end. So this is really all we have time for, a couple of brief answers. So I'm going to read you a little quote, okay? And I want you to think for a minute about the spiritual significance of the changing of the seasons. okay? And specifically about the spiritual significance of the season of fall. Frederick and Marianne Brissot say, as we watch leaves fluttering to the ground in the fall, we are reminded that nature's cycles are mirrored in our lives. Autumn is a time for letting go and releasing things that have been a burden. All the religious traditions pay tribute to such acts of relinquishment. Fall is the right time to practice getting out of the way and letting the Spirit direct our lives. So, what is your reaction to that idea of letting some things go? As we think about the trees turning loose of their leaves, for example, what are some things, especially this fall, that you might want to let go of? Or that people in general might want to let go of? Relinquish is a better word, maybe.
Somebody said earlier that Kayla Bonewell said that she was trying to call 5 people a day in the congregation, but got burned out and let herself off the hook. So I think that's a really great example of that.
Yeah, Michael says in the comments he wants to slow down a bit. Seems like a good time to do it. Yeah. Anybody else? You can use the chat, or you can raise your hand, or just jump in. What might you want to let go of? We've tried a beverage and Bible, Kayla says, several times, but for some reason had less attendance to this type of online gathering than when I schedule a book study. So, stuff in the house, Lonnie says. Yeah, declutter. It might be a great time to do that. Fall declutter.
I'm trying to let go of watching the news as much as possible, because I found I was getting more and more raged, and it wasn't helping me or anybody else, obviously. So I have limited my television time, and of course, as most people do, to only the news reporters who I completely agree with. so that when I get a little bit of news, I can make my way through that and not, leave the room just going, well, I can't pull my hair. I have about as much as you, David. So anyway.
No, you got lots more. Jan says in the comments, letting go of lawn mowing as you move into a time of rest in the Sabbath, renewing for the next springing forth. Thank you for the, do you hear the imagery in Jan's words? And do you sense a little bit of the imagery of fall and putting our spirits and our spiritual journeys alongside the seasons? And you think about the cycles as those are. So that gives you all just a little taste. I wish we could, join me. You're welcome to come any Wednesday night, but I can also help you start this up for yourselves. And there's even a couple subscriptions out there. One of them, I think a UCC pastor does, and I use it sometimes, that is a pub theology subscription. It's like $10 a year, $20 a year, and you get the questions emailed to you, so you don't even have to come up with your own. So anyway, Kayla says one last one. I've let go of feeling like I need to personally preach 47 weeks a year. We have so many talented preachers in the conference. I'm happy to have those weeks off preaching to focus on other parts of ministry. Amen. Thank you, Kayla. All right. Well, let's see what we've got next. Liz, I think you're going to jump in. And
yeah. I've got a couple more programs to talk about, and then we can open it up for questions. So I won't spend a ton of time on logistics here, but I want to talk more about the caring connection, because we've really talked about the social connection and the spiritual connection, and hopefully those are still here as well. But this is really the work I've done on building care groups. So call connection is, at the beginning of the pandemic, I identified because nobody knew what was happening and everybody was terrified and it just was a lot. So I focused on what I could do, and I identified individuals in our congregation who were older, a lot of the time who were single or whose spouse is experiencing dementia. And then I used a survey that I put out about how do you want to help right now, and I paired up calling. I paired up callers. Somebody calls these individuals once a week, and now we're sort of relaunching this so that it's more about just make a connection with someone. Call someone once a week or once every 2 weeks and just talk about whatever. And we may add in some, here's some ideas for chats, but really it's just a matter of making the assignments and then every once in a while checking in to see how are people doing. Are you making your calls? Do you want to continue getting calls? Do you want someone else? And it's been a lot of fun. I've done it, and I've been calling 2 women in the congregation, and I've really formed just lovely friendships with them. And I think we'll keep being friends even if this program goes by the wayside. So that's been neat. And that builds that one-to-one caring connection. Let's see what else. Oh, covenant groups. Covenant groups are our small groups, right? And we have our Plymouth Covenant, where we're a covenantal congregation, and we all say that together each week. And so we tried to build off of this idea of a covenant. And these groups, in their first meeting, they talk about what do we want to covenant with one another? What do we want to decide about? We're going to try not to be late. We're going to not speak over one another. We're going to, if someone's going through a hard time, we'll bring them a meal. That might be part of it. Whatever that group wants to do. And again, this is diffuse leadership, right? So actually, Fred Candler's on the call, and he's one of our covenant group leaders. And he found a second person to help him lead in the group. And his wife, Mona, also helps lead. And that way, if they have to miss a meeting, because they meet twice a month, and if the Candlers have to miss a meeting, then this other person can jump in and take over. And what we're using for a curriculum right now, as I have on the left side of the screen, is the Work of the People. So that is an online resource where it's like a video library, and you can pick a set of videos that take you through some kind of lesson. They've got it all different things. And then there's very little work that the group leaders have to do in preparation, I hope, Fred, I'm not totally sure. But the whole group watches the video on their own, and then they come together twice a month to talk about what it is they watched. And we've got, I think, 4 groups going right now. We just added 2 that are specifically focused on families. And these may not, the family ones, like these are parents. They're probably not going to use Work of the People. They're probably just going to talk about, hey, it's really hard to parent right now. What spiritual issues are we running into? What screen time? What are you doing about screen time? And sharing those things with one another. And they may meet for a slightly shorter time because we're trying to, again, tailor it to people's needs. So we had we had 4 groups worth of people sign up for the first go round. Then we specifically reached out to parents and said, hey, would this be helpful to you? Would this kind of group be helpful to you? And we had another 12 people sign up for that. So this is great. And we're going to do a young adult group as well, and just specifically have young adults meet with one another. So I'm excited to be part of that. So they're real flexible. You can add them as needed. You can, our goal eventually will be to lift out those secondary leaders, maybe, and let them start their own group as we get more people interested in this. But diffuse leadership is the key to covenant groups, and figuring out what works for people. And then prayer team. So this is something we're really working on. We've got a former pastor who has started a prayer team at the church, and we're really trying to give people ways to let us know what's going on in your life. And so we've got a prayer request form online. And of course, people can always just, reach out to the pastor directly or reach out to me directly, and that's fine. But this prayer request form keeps them in one place, and we send it out with every email, and we put it in every bulletin, and we say, hey, we want to know what's going on in your life. We're not seeing you on Sunday mornings like we used to, and so we don't have any way of knowing what's going on unless you tell us, unless you deliberately reach out to us. So we ask on the prayer request form different levels of confidentiality. Actually, I'll just pull up the form. So let me go ahead and do that. Form, and that would be under congregational care, prayer request. Okay. So here is, nope, that's the wrong, sorry. Got tricked. So here's the prayer request form. We ask them their name, their email, and their phone number. And then we say, who is in need of prayer? You know, it may not be them directly. It may be someone that they're related to. It may be someone else from the congregation. How may we hold you or your loved one in prayer? And this is all about levels of confidentiality. So I would like my or their name to stay confidential with the pastors and staff. I would like my or their first name to be shared with the prayer team. Or I would like my or their full name shared with the congregation during Sunday service. So those are different levels that they can select. And if they just wanted to stay with the pastors and staff, then that's what we do. To some of you with smaller congregations, this might seem really impersonal, and that is reasonable. You know, people who, if you are in a smaller congregation, you're used to knowing what's going on with everybody there. But with a big congregation like Plymouth, and added to that, that we just got 2 new pastors in the last, year, who don't know everybody. This is a way that we have found to stay connected to people, and it's been good. We've had lots of good requests on here and made lots of good connections. What help can we offer? I'd like to be contacted by one of the pastors. I'd like to receive periodic phone calls. I'd like to be connected with a Stephen minister. I'd like to receive a prayer shawl. We actually haven't restarted the prayer shawl ministry yet, but that's something we're working on. And then financial assistance. Maybe it's somebody who needs pastor emergency fund, and that's something the pastor would contact them about. Yeah, so that's our prayer request form, and then I collate those prayer requests and the people who want their names shared with the prayer team. I put that on a list. I send it to our to the leader of that ministry, and then he distributes it to a wider email list of people who have said that they want to receive the prayer email, and hopefully they're saying prayers for those people. And then a few of them gather via Zoom to pray together. That hasn't been a huge ministry, and hopefully it'll grow once we're off Zoom and we're able to gather again. But it's been a neat thing. So let's hop back into the PowerPoint. I think that's it. So what questions do you have about our ministries? About or do you have ministries of your own that you think might be a good fit here? We've got about 7 minutes left. So yeah. And stop that share. Who has questions?
Or ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, or ideas.
What I miss most about regular church services is seeing the children. And I want to thank Rachel again for having her newest with her. And once before, when I attended a meeting with Rachel live in person, she brought her daughter, and I enjoyed it enormously. So are there ways that whole families or multiple generations can be integrated into this process of keeping in touch even at this time?
You want to speak to that, David?
I can share what we've been doing.
Sure.
So we used to have Sunday school for our little kids, and so now every other week, our families with kiddos are staying on to our Zoom worship, and someone's teaching a lesson. But also we're trying to find fun ways for the kids to engage, and so one way has been to do charades. So we'll just have a kid think of an animal or a Disney movie or something, and they'll act it out, and the rest of us will look on and try to guess. So just some kind of games that we engage, and the parents are there too. It can be fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know at our church we have a couple different Zoom circles or Zoom meetings for different age. One for children under mid-high age, and then one for those mid-high and senior high where they can go. And we kind of ran it like our regular programming that normally goes on a hiatus for a little while during the summer, but picked it back up with school, and they've been pretty active. And our Christian ed director goes on, and she keeps it going, and it works well. And they've done a couple of outdoor socially distanced gatherings just for kids or youth. But when the kids are young, you kind of have to ask their parents to hold them in their lap or kind of be there to try to make sure they stay distanced to help with liability concerns, and you know, that gets trickier. But and then we have had care packages, and we try to get people, 2 or 3 volunteers to help with that, where we'll make sure that our young people get something from the church as a care package about once every other month or so. And it's got, little candies or whatever, but there's something from the church, and so that they know that we love them and we're still wanting to be connected to them. Anybody else have other things on that line? Liz, you want to say anything about kids or youth?
Yeah, we still have our Plymouth Youth Group meeting once a week on Sunday afternoons. And it's hard because the Zoom burnout is especially real among kids who are having to attend school online. But they've tried to come up with really fun ways to connect, like a murder mystery. I don't know if anybody's ever done Jackbox games, but those are good. They're doing that. And I don't think they've done any in-person events. It's just too. Oh, they did do actually one really neat one. You might like this. They did a totally socially distanced. They chalked people's driveways. So they took our prayer list, of people who said they were okay with the prayer team knowing or the congregation knowing, and they divvied up the addresses, and then they went and drew chalk hearts and pictures in people's driveways who were on the prayer list, and that was really well received. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Very cool.
I think, yeah, go ahead with Puppy Dog on your lap. Nancy?
After the church service is over, they record an actual Sunday school class with the Sunday school teacher so that after the church service is over, I think it's by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the kids actually have their Sunday school class on Zoom or Facebook so that they can have their Sunday school class as usual via Facebook.
Nice. I want to say real quick that I can put together a little resource sheet with these forms that you can go ahead and access, even though don't take the form because unless you really want to participate in our things, you're welcome to. But I can send those out. If Edith, if you have like a list, what's the best way to do that, to get that to people?
Why don't you send it to Michael? He'll take care of it.
Great. I'll do that. So somebody asked me in the chat for that link. And so I'll put together some links. I'll see if David has any links that he can add in, and then we can get that sent out to you hopefully next week.
Any closing thoughts, questions, or ideas in our last minute or two?
What's up, Fred? Oh, you're muted. Muted, Fred.
Sorry.
There you go.
I thought I already done it twice. I'm just wondering if maybe the conference council or some agency of the conference might look at whether we need, as a conference, some of these kinds of connecting. We haven't done fellowship groups during conference necessarily. We have seen people and interacted like this afternoon with this group, but on and on, would it be helpful across the conference to be able to be in touch with each other and break into some smaller fellowship groups on the model that Liz has talked with us about? Just asking, just wondering if that would be supportive to people across the 2 states.
Sure, if someone wants to convene them, we'll certainly provide the Zoom links. Some leadership wants to step up and do it.
Committee Ministry has been talking about that, and there's one clergy cohort that meets, I think, once a month, and we've asked people, if they're interested. I think someone reached out to the retired pastors to see, so I think that's also one of those things that was talked about in this conversation where people have this like Zoom exhaustion, and people like say they want it, but then when we offer opportunities, they don't always sign up because it's like, oh, one more thing on Zoom, I just can't. And so, I mean, I think checking back in regularly, maybe when we asked the last time, people weren't really like seeking this, but I think the Committee on Ministry kind of sees that as one of the things that falls under our umbrella to try to offer support to clergy. And but that's just clergy, Fred. So I don't know if you're also thinking about like lay people connecting across the conference, or are you mostly talking about pastors? Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Nancy Sharp has had her hand up for a while.
Yes.
Muted.
We have a small group at our church that has been going for about 3 years now, and it's called Telling Our Stories, which is why I'm here. No, part of the reason I've been here this week. But we were meeting twice a month at church, and when this all came, we're not meeting at church, and it really wasn't a Zoom type group. And so we've been meeting in parks all summer, about every 2 weeks. We socially distance. We bring our whatever food and beverages we want in our chairs, and we just go to different parks and meet. And it's been great. I mean, we've had a good, not everybody was there every time, but we've had a good representation of the group being there a lot of the time. And it's been really it's not Zoom. You get to at least see and talk to people. And we mask up too also, but just wanted to throw that out.
Nancy, what church are you in?
Oh, I should have said that. I'm at Church of the Open Arms in Oklahoma City.
Oh.
Kayla's our pastor.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here, everybody. This was a lot of fun, and thanks, David. That was fun to work with you. And do you want to say anything in closing?
I'm good. I want to just say thank you to you, Liz. It was a pleasure working with you, and Liz was the master artist with our PowerPoint, and so I give her thanks for that and keeping me organized. You're fantastic.
Right. Well, I think we're good.
Thank you all, and thank you for coming, and see you all tonight. It'll be a great celebration. I think we've got some surprises in store for you that Michael has put together, and some storytelling by our own folks who have been coached and led by Rebecca. So see you tonight. Thank you.